Next up on the docket, two guys accused of rape. Two different college campuses, three victims, and one common thread: widespread outrage over the light sentences each of the two got. This evening, a former Indiana University student accused of raping two women is free after spending just one day in jail. 22-year-old John Enochs, just accepting a plea deal, pleading guilty to battery with moderate bodily injury and sentenced to 1 year probation. Both of the rape charges against him dismissed.
There's no justice, and I just think that's really sad.
Enochs was charged last September after a woman claimed he raped her at a party at this fraternity house, Delta Tau Delta, in April of 2015. According to court documents obtained by ABC affiliate WRTV, the victim says she was drinking at the party, apparently blacking out while trying to find a bathroom, and she ended up in a room with an unknown man having sex with her, telling police when she became aware of what was happening, she tried to push the male off of her and told him no several times, but the male continued to have sex with her.
She is disappointed, to say the least, that there's no real jail time. You know, for her, it's a life sentence, and she is suffering. It's not going to go away.
Police used surveillance video from inside the frat house to identify Enochs. Soon after that allegation, a second victim came forward claiming she was raped by him in 2013.
It's a culture where everything literally is out of control. This underage drinking and this environment, it's not just at Indiana University, it's on other campuses.
While he could have faced up to 16 years in prison, the plea agreement granting Enochs a much lesser sentence.
Hey, do you have anything to say?
This case coming on the heels of the nationwide outrage following what's become known as the Stanford rape case, where former swimmer Brock Turner, found guilty of sexually assaulting an unconscious woman, was given just 6 months in jail. But the prosecutors in Enoch's case say that while investigating the allegations against him, neither case standing alone presented sufficient evidence to prove rape. Enoch's attorney tells ABC News that his client did not rape anyone and he should never have been charged with these offenses. Dan Abrams and Doug Von Oy's favorite person, Nancy Grace, they debated whether prosecutors ought to have taken the Indiana cases to trial at all.
What the prosecutors are actually saying is, we wanted to bring these charges, we're frustrated, but there simply were too many evidentiary problems for us to take this case to trial.
Was it the right call, Nancy?
I think it was a horrible call, and it really pains me to say that about fellow prosecutors. But here's the deal. When I hear that a rape victim is sad at the outcome, you know what? Why not take the case to a jury? If they had the guts to indict it or an information to charge it, then take it to a jury.
All right, I want to unpack a couple of things. First off, Amy, what in both of these cases, prosecutors said of the two women in Indiana, one was seen, she had consumed so much alcohol, there was questions about how her reliability if she went to trial on it. Obviously no eyewitness accounts to it. The other woman, apparently they found DNA that there was maybe another partner that she had been with in the 36 hours prior to it. Is it that the bar should and is extremely hard to convict in such a serious crime as rape, or is the law improperly being used right now where the barrier is just too high to convict for this kind of a charge?
I think it's too difficult to, like, for example, what Nancy Grace said, I totally disagree with that, because, you know, the tendency, I think, is to believe the person who was victimized. And I think that can pose a problem for people who are innocent in these types of situations when you bring it to a jury and so much emotion is involved, but there's a lack of substantial, credible evidence. So I think that's why there's this concept of prosecutorial discretion. We have to leave it to the professionals to exhaust all the forensic tests, see if they can find anybody, to look around and canvass for witnesses, and also to, unfortunately, assess the credibility of the person who was victimized. However, I think there needs to be more of an allowance for that person to change their story, because sometimes victims change their story just because they're traumatized or they're scared, and sometimes that's not taken into account. The second somebody says something that doesn't match up with their original story, oh, they're not a credible witness, we can't bring this case. So I think that's wrong. People should be given a little bit of leeway.
because these cases, Doug, involve college campuses, alcohol, hormones, youth, you guys are both prosecutors here. I'm curious, are these cases always so hard to try because you have so many conflicting stories and so many few in the form of eyewitnesses, and that when you have DNA, it's hard to prove if it was consensual or against someone's will? I would just imagine they're really tough to prove, but it just seems the burden is so stacked against the victim.
I mean, listen, every case you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And in this case, you have two people, presumably neither of them have a criminal record. The victim, I say victim, the person that's bringing the allegation, and the gentleman who's been charged. So as a prosecutor, you have to look at all those factors. There is a presumption of innocence, and a prosecutor has to ask himself, can I actually prove this case? Now, from the facts that you just played, she said she was blacked out. So you're going to have a trial where he's going to say it was consensual, and she's going to say, I don't remember because I was blacked out. At some point, the prosecutor can't just say, I'm going to try it and see what a jury does, because first he has a responsibility as a prosecutor to know that he can actually get a conviction for a charge he brings. So it's very difficult, and these are the cases that prosecutors really have to live with and are very difficult for them.
I only got a minute, Mayo, but what about the argument that Grace, I can't believe I'm agreeing with her, but what about let this woman have her day in court, okay? And even if you think that it's no slam dunk to convict, at least give her the benefit to have a jury of her peers hear a case that you thought was strong enough that you could secure an indictment on, at least go to trial.
Well, you can get an indictment on virtually anything, and it's not about letting the quote-unquote victim have their day in court. It's about doing justice. The prosecutor has an ethical obligation to do what's right, and if that prosecutor has questions about the evidence, questions about intent, then that person shouldn't be going forward. It's not a crapshoot here where the victim has, you know, the ability to just make you go to trial, and if you lose, you go to prison forever. If they believe they had a good case and they could go forward, that's great. It seems to me there are issues in terms of credibility, and not only that, in terms of the ability to recall. If you've blacked out, you're not going to make a great witness. And beyond that, there's a question as to whether these two young men had been drinking, because there's a possibility also that they were close to having blacked out.
That.
So
well, I'm just putting this in human terms. We got daughters at this table. Heaven forbid anything happened to a level like one of us. It just seems so hard.
You know, Rich, they have something in trial work. It's called the golden rule, where you're not allowed to tell a jury, imagine that was you. Right. If you do that, the case gets reversed. And that's the exact reason why. Sometimes you have to take a step back. If that ever happened to your daughter, you'd probably murder the person. But you can't have society murdering people for that reason.
Unfortunately, though, what happens is that if there are no consequences,
yep,
rapists go on to rape other people. And the Marshall Project and ProPublica, two investigative units, found that a woman was not believed and her case not prosecuted, and she had been raped, and the rapist continued to go on and rape and rape and rape.
But
and we also know, I gotta go to break here. We also know how systemic on the college campuses sexual assaults are as well.
It's a culture.
It is, absolutely. Coming up next, should 12-year-olds get tried as adults? Well, in the Slenderman case, two girls are facing attempted homicide charges for allegedly trying in a horrific manner to stab their friend to death. We'll talk and debate that after this.